So welcome everybody. Very happy to have you join us today for this webinar on intelligent content enrichment using SharePoint Syntex and Viva topics. What we'll be talking about today is really connecting people to content, connecting and turning that content into knowledge and topics, creating an experience for users that engages them in the organization and moves them along. So we are very honored today to have Joel Oleson with us, and my name is John Brown. I'm the CEO at HELUX. So let me just take a commercial minute of your time here and just tell you a little bit about HELUX. So everything that you learned today is all within the basket of things that HELUX provides in terms of services and products. Certainly feel free to reach out to us at the end of the webinar. HELUX has a distinctive competency in providing services and products around Microsoft 365, including moving to the cloud, SharePoint Online, Teams, the Power Platform, SharePoint Syntex, Viva topics, and everything that encompasses. We've been a Microsoft Gold partner since 2012, and we're also a preferred partner in the Microsoft Content Services Partner Program, a distinction that we've held for the last 3 years. And what that really demonstrates is that we have a distinctive competency in helping organizations move to and deploy Microsoft 365. We're also members of the AIM Executive Leadership Council, and we're launch partners for Microsoft's Project Cortex, which the Cortex family is by definition SharePoint Syntex and Viva topics. So we're one of the select companies around the world that are launch partners for those products. So certainly happy to help you with implementing those technologies, showing you how they work, showing the advantages and benefits of those technologies. And we're also software developers, and we have two products. One is Themis IA, which is Themis Information Architecture, which streamlines the information architecture process for moving to SharePoint Online. And then we have a newly launched product, which is called Themis ICE. ICE stands for Intelligent Content Enrichment, and it is an intelligent migration tool. So we do ROT analysis, which is file analysis looking for redundant, obsolete, transitory information. And then we work with SharePoint Syntex hand in glove with the auto classification and the routing of documents. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the webinar. A little bit of contact information for you. With that, I'm very happy to be able to introduce Joel Oleson, Microsoft MVP, longtime friend of HELUX, and one of my favorite people in the world.
Hey, it's fantastic to be here at this webinar hosted by HELUX. Longtime friends, longtime partners. It's great to be here and connecting with you. I want to just say that I've been working with HELUX and even in part of this content services program he was referring to, where we've been working with Project Cortex. I think seems like it's been 2 or 3 years already. In some ways, it feels like it's just happened, but in other ways, it's like, man, we've been working on this for years. It's great to be able to see a lot of what the Project Cortex promise was and how it's being delivered in SharePoint Syntex and now Viva Topics, which just launched in February. So super exciting with the SharePoint Syntex stuff that launched in October and the Viva Topics that just barely launched in February, like I said. And now that these products are out there, well, how do these really fit in to this process of content enrichment? And what I mean by content enrichment is every company goes through a continuous process of trying to understand what's being used, what's out there. We talk about shadow IT or even business unit IT and what this empowerment of the business and how everybody's been working on all these different things. You've got your Box and your Dropbox and your SharePoint and your Teams. And then there's all the different things that kind of grow up. And there's the legacy stuff, your file shares, maybe there's some FileNet, maybe there's some Documentum. Way back in the day, I did a lot of stuff with Notes. Not even just Notes 1, 2, 3, which was maybe elementary school, but Lotus Notes. You know, there's still people who use a lot of legacy stuff for their content repositories. What I want to talk about here is just help you understand the process. And there's a process essentially, and it really is a kind of repeatable process, but this idea of going from discovery to building out the promised land, this information architecture and structure that you can then moving that data into the place where you really want to store it so that you can easily retrieve it. And then there's the file analysis that's been referred to, where we really need to understand what it is we're storing. And then there's that enrichment process where SharePoint Syntex really comes to play, where we're doing classification and extraction and all sorts of good stuff. Well, now that you know what you've got and it's been enriched, do we want to kick off processes to either migrate that data or integrate it with automation, notification, business process management type of things? And the latest addition to this is Viva Topics, where this is your organization wiki, essentially. This is enterprise knowledge. This is the ability to highlight content for not just onboarding and new employees to understand, but really connecting experts and content and highlighting topics in the tools we use every day. Just like the messages we've heard, how do these things all really fit together? Well, now these products have been shipped, we can kind of show this end-to-end process. That is the agenda. We want to start from discovery, work our way down, and end with Viva and help you understand kind of what is the promise that Microsoft's providing. And along the way, we have some of the experts from HELUX who are going to show off some of their products in part of this process as well. Hopefully it'll all make sense as we go along. These processes is what everybody's doing, but the fantastic thing is that HELUX has some solutions to help fill in some of the gaps where it would otherwise be manual. Let me start with hoarding. I think every company, especially in the days of migration, which we still are in the days of migration, there's your file shares. There's what's happening in Box and Dropbox and your G Suite, the drives and the iClouds and so on. There's data just sprawl. Sprawl is not a unique problem to companies. It's a super common thing. Some of us like to call it the Wild West. Absolutely, it's the mess of file shares. It seems like every company knows the 2 petabytes or the 100 gigabytes, depending on the size of your company. There's these, when I was at Microsoft, it was, here's, the terabytes of data that's on these legacy file shares that people don't know what it is. And there should be a project to go through that and eliminate the file shares, or to at least turn those file shares into archives, and that active collaboration is taking place in the right place where it can be managed. As we talk about in these recursive steps, there's what you want to do. And man, there's a maturity model here, of course. Is your environment total chaos, or have you been able to get your arms around this problem? People are in different stages. Well, the most exciting thing is obviously that last few steps where we're actually doing content enrichment and we're integrating with our business processes, but we got to start with the discovery to get past that. Let me talk about that kind of future state. What is utopia? Is it the land of milk and honey? What is this utopia? Is it when people upload files that they're having better collaboration and better productivity? Absolutely. But as an organization, there's some considerations around labeling for liability purposes. What about expiration, disposition? There's a number of things based on what type of industry you're in as to sensitivity labels or regulations, but everybody should care about the fact that when I send my passport number to HR, that it's not going to end up in some public folder somewhere. That my driver's license that I just sent to somebody for booking a trip, my visa or whatever, that those things are not being stored in places that are just going to be held forever. I mean, it's not just GDPR and privacy considerations here. We're absolutely talking about real life here and the serious liability that has, where people do have a right to be forgotten. If I'm no longer working in that organization, they shouldn't have my passport and driver's license. And absolutely, they should not have my allergies that they were requesting from the Halloween party from 5 years ago. Unfortunately, all too often that happens. So I do think that understanding this idea of paradise, understanding this future state, it's important to understand, okay, what do we want to accomplish here? I love the way that Viva paints the picture around empowered knowledge workers, where we talk about our ability to highlight topics that are very meaningful for the organization. But it's as well, we think about our company crown jewels, the most important information. If we are Cheerios, if we're General Mills and we make Cheerios, the recipe for Cheerios better be in a safe and secure place. If you're a manufacturing business, those engineering documents, they're sensitive, absolutely sensitive. I used to work at a gaming company, and their most valuable asset was the code. There were all sorts of policies around making sure that code that was for games unreleased was essentially locked up. Those things shouldn't be shared externally. Well, guess what? They had partners working on stuff. So how do you get the partners working on things in such a way that the collaboration is absolutely secure? So you can't just say it's the firewall anymore when you've got partners that are working on your stuff. So a lot of this is trying to figure out how do you make that knowledge more accessible, but also secure. So building out these knowledge bases and building out your enterprise knowledge. Now, what I've done here from a layout perspective, you'll notice that basically I'm using that diagram for each of the sections here. From a discovery perspective, which is that first step, it's important to understand that every day information is growing, complexity is growing, knowledge is growing, employees are spending hours otherwise searching for data. The rate at which information is growing is now triple the time that it was just 5 years ago. And you think about that from an onboarding perspective, a skill development perspective, and the knowledge drain of people walking outside, this knowledge sharing is ever more important. The expectation that we're going to ramp up and be working immediately and be billable or be on the front lines is all about that productivity efficiency. One of the things I wanted to mention was you think about getting your arms around the data. Well, not all data is created equally. We've got the groupware type software. There's the team chat like Slack and Teams and so on. There's the enterprise social networks like Yammer. There's all this ECM data, your open texts and Highland and so on. Just so many different types of categories when you start talking about collaboration. And one of the most important things I want to have as a kind of a key takeaway, there's something called the Okta Business at Work, which is an annual report. Okta is a single sign-on tool, and I'm not here to sell that tool, but I just want to hone in on this little report. It basically says everybody's using Microsoft 365. The numbers are clear that it's winning the race right now. Obviously, we've got all these other solutions that are out there, Box and Slack and Atlassian Stack and so on, Workday, ServiceNow, and all these things do work together. There's a bunch of different SaaS software out there. I want people to know that you're in the right place with Microsoft 365. Fantastic investment. We're doing really well here. And from a collaboration perspective, these days it's about integration and it's about getting your arms around the data. So what that means as well is connectors. It means migrations happening. With that being said, the discovery is how do we get our arms around this data and understand what we've got, okay? And absolutely, there's a ton of connectors that are out there. This next piece, we want to talk about information architecture, and I'm actually going to hand the baton over, but I just want to say high level, there's some really good exercises in the SharePoint space around hubs. Hubs was one of the features released in the last couple of years around being able to start to gather the data that's like things that are like departmental data or external data. And then you've got your content types so that we can actually gather data on the way in or even extracting and pushing that data into those content types. And content types and taxonomies can really help us get access to our data.
Thank you very much for handing this over. I appreciate your time today. I just wanted to expand just briefly on what Joel was just saying, and that's the importance of having a good information architecture. Perhaps not the most interesting topic of conversation, so I will keep it short. However, very important because if you think of your information architecture is really, it's all about the scaffolding of the system. So you're using M365 as a collaboration space, and there's going to be an information architecture behind that. And Joel had alluded to that already. There's content types, there's columns, there's managed metadata, there's settings on libraries, there's lists, there's all sorts of things that make up a SharePoint site, whether that's a hub site or something that is attached to a hub site. And Microsoft makes this very easy to create. And that's fantastic because you want people to collaborate. However, because it's very easy does not necessarily mean that if you wanted, for example, a temporary project site, and you wanted to spin that up very quickly, and you really didn't have all that many needs for information architecture, because literally it's going to be open for 3 months with a bunch of external collaborators, and then you're shutting it down. That's made extremely simple. It's a couple of clicks of the button and off you go. The problem is that can really result for, if you are looking at your business units and your workers that are permanent and that need permanent sites, well, you might want to think about something that is a little bit more standard, that follows some conventions. You may also want to think about reusing some of the components so that it doesn't take so long to build one of these things when you have a good information architecture, when that scaffolding is in place. So HELUX has a product called Themis IA, that stands for Information Architecture, which is really meant to make this easy for you. So this is a no-code solution, first of all, so you can be a business user and use this. It's meant to be an end-to-end solution that allows you to create sites in SharePoint Online. And not only just the site itself, but it uses a modern UI, as you can see here. It centrally allows you to create a site. So it's all done centrally. It's all done in one place. So there's no need to have scripts that you're using. There's no need to have a mind map of what the site's going to look like and what the settings are. It's all done centrally. And you can design a hub site, libraries, all of the content types, the metadata that goes with it, the views, the permissions, the security groups, all in one spot. And what really makes this something that we're really excited about is because it really allows for a user such as myself, and I'm not a developer, I'm not a SharePoint developer, it allows for a person like me to go in here and be able to create a site end to end with just a couple of clicks, and I can get that governance, and I can also publish and reuse the information, which is really what you want to do. You want to repurpose and reuse all of these things that you're creating, whether it's, as shown here, a particular field that you're using, a particular content type that you want to reuse, a particular library. And so we've actually used this to onboard a pretty large customer that had 15,000 users and over 500 sites that are all being recorded in this tool. And they wanted a way to do this in a controlled manner so that it's not just willy-nilly that everybody can just spin up sites left and right. No, they want to do this in a controlled manner. And there was a lot of commonalities between the sites. So this allows you to kind of visualize all of these commonalities. You can approve these ahead of time, because what's created in here as the last step is now pushing it and publishing it to SharePoint. So you can create everything in here, get it pre-approved, get it all done. You don't have to worry about scripts or supporting them or having a developer make them for you. This does all the heavy lifting for you. And what's nice is that not only can you publish a site and a library and a list and content types and everything that goes with it, you can also publish other artifacts too, like just a content type if you wanted to update something, or just the taxonomy through you had a change in your metadata. And so that is kind of Themis IA, which really, if you're looking at the life cycle here, which is dead smack in the middle, this is part of the scaffolding or the bookend, is the information architecture. Now, Joel is going to take you through essentially talking about some other pieces that you'll see both here on the left and some a little bit on the right. And then I'll come back a little bit later to talk about another product that kind of puts this together.
That next piece is, we're talking about how important that information architecture is, but then there's the file analysis piece. And the file analysis, I remember a very specific project where we had 50 file servers and a number of them were scattered around the globe. And so we were just trying to understand, what is it that we actually have? File analysis is really trying to just understand, kind of work your way through, what is this data? This is actually one of the Microsoft marketing little images here. And I like this idea of knowing your data. You can't protect your data, you can't govern your data, you can't prevent data loss until you know your data. So this really is that first part of it. When you start trying to understand, how does this intelligent platform come together? I really feel like it's getting to know your data. But before you can even have Syntex, as an example, analyze your data, you'll notice that Syntex itself isn't going to understand all file types. So you really need to first break down what are the files you want it to look at? Because the other part of this is the more you understand what Syntex does and what it can do, you'll also understand you don't want to be throwing all your files at it. First off, because it doesn't understand the file types, but as well, if you got all this legacy data and you're just trying to have it extract it, well, you probably don't want to use the compute from, say, AI Builder, because you're going to pay per document. So you don't really want to do that on your aged data. And you also don't want to do it on somebody else's data. So a lot of it is understanding ownership, understanding aging, understanding sizes. Whenever I analyze, say, a box migration or a file share migration, a lot of these migration tools, they're not about really understanding the data first, but that's really what you should do before you move the data. Is you really should understand what is it that we've got. As an example, in just the screenshot, you can see there were 26% were DLLs. Well, it's kind of important to understand, hey, we're probably shouldn't be moving those DLLs into SharePoint or into Teams. Those JPEGs, are those massive JPEGs from video games, or are those JPEGs from some kind of library? You know, just the fact that we understand those are image files, sometimes we have to dig into our data and start chunking it up a little bit to understand what is this data, who owns it, can we understand the different extensions? And especially if we're going to be processing this data, we need to understand what are the Office files, the PDFs, the TIFFs and JPEGs, and on, to really understand this is collaborative data, this is active collaboration, which is the stuff we really care about. But what are we going to do about all this other stuff? And I kind of like the analogy of this Lego one. First off, files are like a pile of Legos, and really it's more like you dump out your toy closet. You want to build something with Legos, but you find that there's some Tinker Toys mixed in here. There's some G.I. Joe arms and legs, whatever. You find that there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't relate. And this aspect of really the ability to organize and sort by color, shape, function, from a Lego perspective, that's kind of how to think about SharePoint Syntex. It can help you classify your files. It can help you sort through them. This idea of content enrichment is really what SharePoint Syntex is all about. So going back to that kind of Lego example, classify, extract, organize, and really unlocking your organizational knowledge. And I already alluded to the fact that SharePoint Syntex really cares about your Office files. And as an example, you try and upload an Excel file, even though it's an Office file, it's going to be like, nope, I can't analyze your Excel file. It really is focused on text-based data. And there is, in the tech library, you will see that there's a list of file types that SharePoint Syntex can understand and grovel through, but it will not do images. And so we'll kind of dive into this a little bit further. Think about this SharePoint Syntex as classifying, extracting, and unlocking. I kind of often think of this reasoning over your data. There's really kind of two major pieces to this. And I think this video here, I know we don't have a lot of time to jump into a video, and I end up doing a 1 hour hands-on, or actually I've done kind of a 4 hour hands-on workshop around SharePoint Syntex, but I think this video actually illustrates it quite well.
Managing digital assets is a big challenge for many businesses who need to effectively use the information locked in their documents. For example, a mortgage finance company can deal with thousands of different documents, such as contracts, forms, billing statements, and inquiries on a monthly basis. Businesses need a solution that quickly and automatically classifies the many different document types they deal with and pulls out important information from those documents to make it visible to their users. They need a solution that aids in file retrieval, integrates with business processes, and ensures proper governance of their digital assets. Microsoft SharePoint Syntex does this by turning your information into knowledge. In Syntex, your users create content understanding models that automatically classify documents that are hosted in your SharePoint libraries. By training your model through example files, you can also extract data from your documents and display this information in columns in your document libraries. As an example of its value, your model can identify and classify all contract renewal documents that are uploaded to your library, and then display the customer name, phone number, and total dollars for each document as a column in a library view. Using other applications such as Power Automate, You can then customize your solution to do things such as notify your legal department for all contract renewal documents that exceed a certain dollar amount. SharePoint Syntex allows you to use two different types of models. Use form processing models if you need to process structured and semi-structured documents, such as forms where the data is typically in the same location in the document. Use document understanding models to process unstructured documents where the information is contained in blocks of text. For example, a statement of work. Form processing uses AI Builder, a Power Platform capability designed to similarly automate metadata extraction. With AI Builder, you create and train a model to extract information. Syntex then allows you to reference that model with a Power Automate flow and run it on files loaded to a specific library whenever files are uploaded. Document Understanding uses innovative machine learning techniques to help you train your model to classify and extract your documents by using a small, unlabeled teaching set of files. In addition to training your model, the model interface helps you test its effectiveness and makes changes for improvements on the fly. Learn more about SharePoint Syntex.
SharePoint Syntex was released October 1st. It's $5 a user a month. There was a question in the Q&A panel, and I would encourage people to put questions in here that says, does Syntex need to be licensed for every user, or can it be licensed to an information management team? And the absolute answer is the people who are building the models, those are the ones who need access to the licenses. So it doesn't have to be everybody in the company. It absolutely can be those who are basically managing and building models in the content centers. There's really a number of things that it can do. And essentially, this is kind of a flow of starting from, yes, today we live in a world where it's very manual, where you can actually use the content types. That's the world we kind of live in, or have been living in, is users doing it. There's object detection. This first was introduced with AI Builder and with the Power Platform, where it can be scanning your receipts. It can do content extraction, as an example, scanning of business cards and using OCR for text. And there are some new enhanced features in AI Builder where you can actually have it reason over your data. It can recommend fields, and then you're picking and choosing the fields that can then be turned into a content type, or you can actually attach them to an existing content type. And then there's the forms processing side of it. Same kind of idea. You basically teach it based on a set of purchase orders or contracts, can be even letters. That idea of the forms processing versus the document understanding, some slight differences where the forms processing side of it is more around structured documents, and then the document understanding, like it was even talking about, is more about things that are more unstructured, like a resume or a letter or contracts. There's some vice versa. What you'll notice is the forms processing side is images, including PDFs. The document understanding side of it is things like Word docs. And just kind of reinforcing that idea, inside of Syntex, there's the document understanding, and then we've got with AI Builder, which is an additional licensing from a perspective of how many documents are you going to need to be processing. Those two kind of go hand in hand. Often Microsoft will refer to them all as Syntex, but essentially it's built off of this intelligent file services. And when you set up Syntex, it is enabling a lot of it, but then to get the full feature set of AI Builder, you do need to have the licensing for AI Builder turned on. So like if you're trying to do a trial, you need to set up the trial for Syntex and AI Builder to get that going. You even set up an environment to then get AI Builder going. This next piece, we're talking about intelligent migration and automation. First off, I would just kind of say high level, this is the key piece. You've just extracted a bunch of information. Now, how do we plug this into our automation side of things? Or do we need to migrate the data so that it can then be even more useful?
So what I would like to present right now is you see at the top here, there's a number of arrows. It looks like kind of a sort of a linear flow of things. At the HELUX here is we have a product that helps with, so you saw one of them, which is the information architecture one that was alluded to earlier. That's one of these arrows and is a piece of the puzzle. But another one that we're super, super excited about is called Themis ICE, Intelligent Content Enrichment. It's a bit of a mouthful, but what Themis ICE allows organizations to do is that it can integrate with what you just saw, which was SharePoint Syntex, to the document understanding models of SharePoint Syntex. However, it's an end-to-end product that does not just integrate with Syntex to allow you to classify data and extract metadata. It goes from end to end so that you can find the right information when you need it. You could also do the things that we've just talked about. You want to discover your data. You want to do a ROT analysis of the data. Then you want to classify the data, tag the data, and then using some intelligent rules, route the data. And that's what makes us unique. We have the ability to classify the data and route it to one or more locations in SharePoint Online. These are document library. What this really does fundamentally, it addresses a number of different use cases. This enables you to avoid the lift and shift problem, which is, oh, we have file shares, let's just put everything from the file share into SharePoint Online. We've got good information architecture, shouldn't be a problem. Well, that will still be a problem, because the thing is that if you just take data that should have never been included, you're just going through the same pain. You've just transferred the problem. Themis ICE is really hoping to help you with that, and it works in conjunction with SharePoint Syntex. It has 5 steps. Essentially, the 5 steps are pretty simple. It does a discovery, which is identifying the content that you want. You can optionally do the cleanup of the content. Okay, so this is all done within a single product. This isn't multiple products going to multiple places. This is one product where you can clean up the data. So you can remove duplicates, outdated, redundant ROT analysis, redundant, outdated, and trivial information. You can enrich. So the step number 3 right there is if you are using SharePoint Syntex, that's where Syntex comes into play. It's step number 3, where you can classify and enrich the content. So you can extract metadata and classify the content. And then what you can do, more importantly, is define rules. Where is this going to go? On the basis of what was found in step 3. Very unique proposition. So if we detected, hey, this is an invoice or a contract or a memo, this should go into the invoice library, and we should extract this metadata for it. And so you can do these things. You could also do rules like, we don't know what this data was. So why don't we put it into quarantine library or a library that is meant to be reviewed? But that's not the end of it. You could use Themis ICE a second time. So Themis ICE allows you, it's not just for file shares to SharePoint, absolutely not. You could go from a file share into SharePoint Online, that's perfectly fine. You could do SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint Online, but you can also do SharePoint Online to SharePoint Online in the same tenant. And why would you do that? Because your SharePoint Online became a dumping ground. And it became a dumping ground because you just dumped stuff in there and you decided, oh, we haven't intelligently managed our data. So you could easily, as the source, perform a ROT analysis on a library in SharePoint and then get the context, define the rules, and then route the information from that. So that's what makes this proposition very unique, is that it's not a one-shot deal. I'm going to use this one time. Absolutely not. This is something that can be used and reused to enrich and to get better data at the other end, because getting better data at the other end allows for a lot of downstream activities in SharePoint, or in the M365 platform, I should say. This here is what you see in part of the interface. It's one single solution where you can go through all of the steps. You can apply the exclusions, you can discover data, then apply exclusions, you could remove duplicates. The exclusions can be done by age, by all of the things, extension, certain paths. If you're in a file share, or if you're in SharePoint, it could be certain places that in libraries or folders that you don't want to consider. And you get to use the classification models that are available in Syntex, one or many. And here is really the crux of the product, is creating these very rich rules to be able to move the data around to its final resting location. And once you have a human resources library here, where you've got data that's in its resting place, and automatically using AI learning, you've classified the data and extracted metadata for this. so that you can use the Power Platform. You could use labels, sensitivity labels, retention or records, management capabilities in the platform, or even with third parties. So there are a tremendous number of benefits into enriching the content when it gets to the other end. Another benefit that comes from enriching the content that Joel is going to take you through is Viva Topics. This is something that when you have really, really good enriched content, this is something where you can derive some information to help you discover even more knowledge.
I absolutely think of this ability to have your content highlighted and building out this topic center that basically gives you your enterprise knowledge and exposes definitions of acronyms for your company. It helps you understand key terms. Really a very rich knowledge base of connections between the content and experts. It really takes advantage of Microsoft Graph and in being able to pull and make and build ontologies between the data that's happening in projects, and helping people who don't understand things, being able to ramp up, but also really being able to connect the people to the experts. So from an expert perspective, you can actually see what's happening around the topics that you're following. A real richness to everything we're talking about here. And somebody was saying, how is this AI? This is a great example of AI. When you turn on Viva Topics, it actually looks at your taxonomies. You tell it what you want it to focus on, which kind of builds off our previous step of putting our data in places so that we can then say, this is good, clean data. Let's go analyze that. The AI reasons over it, understands some of the terminology and the topics that are being used here, and suggests topics where this is kind of this AI human interaction where it says, yes, I like what you're recommending. And then it can actually populate summarization. So it actually builds out summaries, and you can sit in this space of being able to validate the recommendations that AI is providing and building out these ontologies, the relationships between your projects, your files, your data, your teams, and so on. So this is a kind of an animated image. This is a Microsoft image here, you can see, but on the right-hand bottom corner, you can see the ontology, the connections between SOAR, which is an acronym with a definition. In fact, you can see that definition on the left-hand side on a mobile device. You can see there's people connected to that data. And here we are in Microsoft Teams, and we're chatting about a project, and boom, we can click on it, and we get right into the topic center, right inside of Teams. We don't even have to leave Teams to end up in the topic center to then be able to see, and we can navigate to people or navigate to documents. Really, really powerful connection. So you can understand why we want to clean up our data so that we're not having it build off of junk. This is actually a screenshot from when I was setting up topics in my tenant. Some of the key questions it was asking is, hey, do you want to set this up on all sites or some specific sites? Are there any topics you want to exclude? Who can see them? And somebody was asking about licensing. For Syntex, do you need to license it for everybody? No, you actually don't. Syntex is absolutely one where you can focus on who should be in the content center building out models. Those are the people who should have Syntex. And when you think about licensing around Viva Topics, you should absolutely be thinking about who needs to see topics, because only the people who have licenses for Viva Topics will be able to see those topics. In this example, I do see Viva Topics as something you want to do broadly, but you don't have to. You absolutely can start with a smaller group and then vet that information, make sure that it's good. You could even start with an engineering part of the organization where they're getting the most value out of it. Both Topics and Syntex are only $5 a user a month, and these are totally different licenses. They're not part of E3 or E5, but just kind of showing you that you absolutely, in both of these examples, you don't have to license it to everybody. Who can create and edit topics? You can decide. Not everybody, you don't have to give everybody the keys to being able to create topics. And who then manages it? So you as well can narrow down who's managing it. Here's just kind of a quick view of what Topics looks like from that perspective as well. And this is the new Topics app inside of Teams. They just barely announced this just last week. And what you're seeing there is one of the Yammer Q&A features where you can basically have, here's the question, people answer it. Hey, this should be turned into a topic, boom. And then you generate a topic based on the conversation. Basically, you've got a topic and somebody's like, you know what, I have a question about this topic. I can then ask it, mention a bunch of people, hey, do you know the answer to this? And then pull it right into the relevant topic to really rich knowledge on the organization.
With our new employee experience platform, Microsoft Viva, businesses can empower employees by giving them great experiences that put knowledge to work and connect them to experts. For example, with Viva Topics in Microsoft Teams, hovering over a topic gives employees an instant summary of it. That summary is on a topic card, and it also lists key documents and top subject matter experts. No searching, no app switching. The information finds employees in the apps they already use every day. Then they can select the card to open its topic page. That topic page offers a detailed view of all the information Viva Topics has collected, including definitions, subject matter experts, key documents, related topics, and curated discussions and communities, all there to help them learn more about the topic. Of course, managers can curate and edit this information, add alternate names, select recommended experts, and highlight recommended content. They can also review suggested topics before publishing and filter to see which get the most and least engagement, so they can shape the flow of knowledge throughout your organization. Not only does Viva organize information into topics, but it also connects people to experts. Employees can look at their profile cards to see their skills and learn what they've already accomplished. They can also submit questions to the experts that Viva Topics recommends. And it saves the responses to make that information available to the next person asking a similar question. In that way, Viva Topics helps to preserve valuable institutional knowledge. And when they need even more information, employees can use the Topics app in Microsoft. And when they need even more information, employees can use the Topics app in Microsoft Teams. In the Topic Center, they can find and follow information from the organization, like suggested learning courses based on the topics they already follow. Viva Topics uses the Microsoft Graph to organize content into topics. It already organizes information in Microsoft 365. However, content connectors give companies the power to integrate information from other sources, like ServiceNow. Over 130 connectors are available now, and you can use our API to integrate even more sources. Viva Topics inherits the API's security and compliance capabilities, so employees see only what they have permissions to see. We're working to extend Viva Topics beyond Microsoft Teams, so you'll see the same topic highlights in other Microsoft 365 apps, including Outlook and SharePoint. Viva Topics frees employees from time-consuming searches for information and people, making it easy to find the content, resources, and experts that can help them succeed every day. Viva Topics is available now as an add-on to all Microsoft 365 plans.
All right. Viva may be new to you, but there's kind of this major set of products around Viva, which is the employee experience.
Thanks to you, Joel, and thanks to everybody for attending. This is it's been an awesome session and a real learning experience.